Welcome to the Book Bungalow's virtual writers workshop with Sarah Noble, taking the perfect rock from an idea to publication. Doesn't have to be the perfect rock. It can be any book, really. Children's book, let's say. This event is part of the 25th annual Utah Humanities Book Festival. This annual free festival is the Utah Humanities gift to the community, allowing us to explore all sorts of ideas by interacting with great writers. The complete program is available at www.utahhumanities.org, and I've put that in the chat. Our thanks to the book festival's major sponsors: George S. and Dolores Dory Eccles Foundation, Salt Lake City Arts Council, Salt Lake County Zoo Arts and Parks Fund, Summit County RAP, Weber County RAMP, R-A-M-P, the Charles Redd Center for Western Studies, the King's English Bookshop, Weller Bookworks, Under the Umbrella Bookstore, the Book Bungalow, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the National Endowment for the Arts, and Catalyst. We'd also like to thank our ASL interpreter, Sarah Hinze, for helping us out this afternoon. We acknowledge that the Book Bungalow resides on the original territory once inhabited by the ancestral Puebloans and the Fremont indigenous people. Today, southwestern Utah is primarily home to the San Juan Southern Paiute tribe and the Paiute Indian tribe of Utah, a confederation of 5 bands: Cedar, Indian Peaks, Kanash, Kusharam, and Shivwits. Tribes that have been living, working, and residing on this land from time immemorial. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced removal from this land, and we honor and respect the indigenous peoples still connected to the land on which we gather, even virtually. Please let's take a moment of silence to think about and pay respect to the indigenous peoples of past and present. Through September and October, the Book Bungalow is offering several author events, including this virtual writing workshop, as part of the Humanities Book Festival. We invite you to look at our schedule on our website, and I'll put that in the chat room once the presentation gets going, along with a link to order Sarah's book. I'll try and put that too. If not, you'll get a follow-up email after all of this with the recording link and those links. Finally, at the conclusion of Sarah's presentation, I'm sure she'll be happy to answer questions from any of you. So feel free to pose them in the Q&A as they occur to you, and I'll read them aloud once we get to that point. Sarah Noble is an American illustrator and author with a passion for color, composition, and storytelling. She earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Brigham Young University and a master's in children's book illustration from the Cambridge School of Art in the UK. She enjoys creating narratives using a variety of techniques, including pen and ink, watercolor, and oil pastels. She loves exploring the relationship between text and illustration, as well as the process of creating a world with memorable characters. Much of Sarah's inspiration is drawn from nature and unique atmospheric or moody environments. Her goal is to create beautiful, thought-provoking narratives that resonate with both young and old audiences. The Perfect Rock is the follow-up to her debut picture book, which she shared with us last year, As Strong as the River. And I'm going to turn the time over now to Sarah Noble. She will share her screen, and she can begin with her presentation and talk about her offers.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Tanya. Here, let me get my screen up. Okay, everyone see that okay? Okay. All right, so my name is Sarah Noble, and I'm a picture book author and illustrator. I'm really excited to be here and thrilled that Tanya from the Book Bungalow asked me to be part of this with the Utah Humanities Book Festival. And if you've signed up for this workshop, I'm guessing that you're a writer, you aspire to write, maybe even you like to draw and are thinking about illustrating a picture book. And today I want to talk to you about how I come up with maybe my ideas and how my books go from just an idea to a finished book. And I really hope that this can be helpful to you in some way. So being a writer, I love themes. And as I was preparing this workshop, I was realizing that there was a reoccurring theme, which is finding your creative voice. And so I think that by, sharing that now, maybe you can pick apart some of the things I'm going to say and use that in your own journey to create your voice. So let's see. Neil Gaiman said, "There are better writers than me out there. There are smarter writers. There are people who can plot better. There are all those kinds of things, but there's nobody who can write a Neil Gaiman story like I can." So part of a creative voice is kind of where you come from. So I'm just going to share a little bit about myself. Tanya was kind enough to share my bio with you, so I won't go into too many details, but I grew up in Utah, in St. George specifically, so I was surrounded by mountains and lots of beautiful environments, and that definitely has played a key part in my books and in the stories I choose to tell. I also love animals, so I have a cat and a dog. Dog is Sadie, and my cat is Nyx, Nyx. She's on the floor with me right now. She just got spayed the other day, but I don't know why I said that, but yeah, she's here too. And I love to travel, so that also plays a part. I like to find many different things about the places I go and use that in my artwork and in my storytelling. I also wanted to share with you kind of how I got started or what inspired me to continue creating stories and drawing and all of that, because, you know, when we're kids, we really like to draw or we really like to tell stories, but sometimes we grow out of that as we get discouraged. So I just want to share with you kind of what helped keep me grounded in this. So I have an aunt named Susan Grove, and she's a wonderful muralist. She does fine art paintings as well. She actually did the murals in the book bungalow, which you should definitely check out if you get the chance. It's really magical. But when I was a child, I grew up just looking up to her so much because the work she did looked like magic to me. And I see it on her, the finished pieces on her wall, and just thought, like, wow, I like to draw, but I could never do something like that. And then one day I walked into her studio, and I'd never been in there before. I don't think I was supposed to be, but I was really surprised by what I saw. And what I saw were not just the finished paintings on the walls that I had seen before, but paintings in all different stages of finishing. So some were halfway done, some I couldn't even quite make out what they were supposed to be yet. There were something, but I didn't know. And then some were even like faced against the wall in the corner that I could tell she was maybe going to recycle some of those canvases. Like maybe she wasn't pleased with them. And that was so surprising to me because when you only see the finished piece, you don't know everything that goes into it. And being able to see that process as a kid let me know that it is a process. And if it's a process, it can be replicated, and I can, maybe I could also progress into an artist that I would be pleased with my own work. And after a very long time, these are some paintings I did after my undergrad was over, and I had a small career as a fine artist. After a long time, I was able to work hard enough and hone my craft to where I was happy with the work I was doing. And that also went into the more creative side, or both are creative, but the writing side as well, because I also love to tell stories and I love to write. And I wasn't quite sure how to mix those two things together. But then I realized that, you know, picture books are like an art gallery. You open it up and you see all the different pages and you feel something, and it's special. And it's a moment to connect with children. It's a moment to just discover, you know, maybe your own childhood joys, and just teach really important lessons, and are really wonderful to look through. So I knew that that was something I wanted to pursue. And I won't bore you with all the details, but I did start to illustrate some of my own stories. These are some examples of like kind of early days when I was doing some illustration. And I was doing kind of what I thought illustration was supposed to look like. And I am proud of these. I do remember looking at these and feeling like, yeah, I was telling a story I like. But I wasn't quite being authentic to my own voice, which was rooted in fine art. And so when I was doing my master's program and I was doing some of this work and I wasn't really getting the feedback I was hoping for from my tutors and my peers, I kind of like pushed this aside for a little bit and was like, you know what, I'm just going to experiment with the things I know and like, which are oil paintings. And I use that in the form of oil pastels, which are kind of like oil paints, but it's like a stick form. So I'd like, here, I'll show you an example. This is a very rough image. But what I would do is I'd use these oil pastels and I'd draw it on the paper, and then I'd get one of my brushes and I'd go over it with turpentine, and it would smear the paint and make it look like water or like fur. Oh, I should have explained at the beginning, but this image is supposed to be a bear underwater trying to catch salmon. So you can see how rough it is at the beginning. And I started to get a little bit more confident with it. You could actually kind of see what it's supposed to be a little bit. This was like the preliminary work for As Strong as the River, which is the one with the bear. And eventually, after a lot of work, I was able to control the medium a little bit better. And by using, like I said, the oil pastels and also introducing these wax pastels, I was able to get that detail and control I was looking for. The purpose in all of this, and me sharing this with you, because you may or may not be artists or writers, you may or may not be illustrators as well, is to show that it's all a process. And just like I had to kind of work through a lot to find my voice as an artist, it's in tandem, it's the same with writing. I just can't maybe show you the progression I did with writing as well as I can with art. And that artwork was polished enough to where I was able to show it to Flying Eye Books, which is the publisher for these books. And I was able to catch their attention and be able to get a book deal, which is every picture book writer and illustrator's dream. And I'm going to share with you The Perfect Rock. Just before I tell you how it all happens, I want to show you what it actually is first. Just make this sec. Okay. 1 second while I get that up. Okay. So I'll just read this book to you now. The Perfect Rock. Every otter worth their sea salt knows the perfect rock is hard to find. But Ollie, B, and Ula don't have time to think about rocks because, well, they have a pretty busy schedule. And after a long, busy day, nothing hits the spot more than a shellfish feast. Now all you need is something to open shells with so you can have feasts all on your own. Ollie, B, and Ula do love shellfish. It takes time to find the perfect rock, Papa says, so it's important to know what to look for. The perfect rock is tough, Mama says, tough enough to break the hardest shells. Don't forget smooth, Papa says, smooth enough to dance in your paws. Most importantly, they say, your rock must be something you hold dear, something you'll hold tight and never lose. Together they venture through forests and glide through skies in search of the perfect rock. They search high tide and low tide until finally it's tough, Ollie says, tough enough to break the hardest shells. And smooth, says B, smooth enough to dance in my paws. I love it, says Ula. They all do, but there is only one.
Sarah, we can't see. If you're showing the pictures, we can't.
Oh,
see
can you
them.
not see?
No.
Oh no.
We're just seeing the beginning of your writer's workshop PowerPoint.
Oh shoot. Okay. Thank you for saying that, because that's, maybe I'll stop share for a second and then try again. Let's see. Can you see this okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll go back a few pages just to just to let you look through. Oh goodness, I'm sorry about that. This page. And then I'll start from here. Together they venture through forests and glide through skies in search of the perfect rock. They search high tide and low tide until finally it's tough, Ollie says, tough enough to break the hardest shells. And smooth, says Bee, smooth enough to dance in my paws. I love it, says Ula. They all do. But there is only one. The perfect rock will fit perfectly in my pouch, says Ula. But I saw it first, whines Ollie. But I have it now, says Bee, and you can't catch me. They spring and splash, turn and twist, fumble, and the perfect rock is gone. Ollie, Bee, and Ula don't look at each other the whole swim home, not when they pass a slippery looking slide, not even when they spy a funny looking fish. They are too angry and too sad. But when the waves start moving in a quicker, scarier rhythm, they remember to hold each other tight. I'm sorry, they say, feeling lighter already. Who needs that old rock anyways, Ollie says. There are lots of rocks, Ula says. Maybe there's still a perfect one for each of us. The perfect rock is tough. Tough enough to break the heart, is tough enough to weather the storm. It is smooth, smooth enough to ease worries big and small. Most importantly, the perfect rock is dear enough to hold tight and never lose. That is what every otter worth their sea salt knows. And do the stop share so I can get back into my PowerPoint. Okay, and can you see my PowerPoint again?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, well, thank you for listening for that and for being patient. I didn't realize. It's good to know though. All right, so part of how I come up with my ideas is like as a writer, I'm thinking about what I find interesting, what I am passionate about, some of the things that like I watch and I read and I experience all play a part in how I come up with picture book ideas. So, and with the example of the perfect rock, this was like the first image I did for the perfect rock, and I didn't know it was going to be a book yet. So it obviously looks very different. But I knew that when I'd heard on a nature documentary, when I was doing this drawing, that otters do this cool thing with rocks where they put it in a pouch under their arm and then keep it, use it to break open shells, use it as a toy, that there was so much potential there for an idea. So there might be something else for you that is just as intriguing that you've come across. And how do you know an idea is special? For me, it's when one idea sparks many ideas. So if it was just like, I just thought otters are cool, but I didn't know the other piece of the information, I might not have had a story there. And so it takes time to think about. And when I'm able to kind of put on the brakes for a minute and be thinking about story ideas, and it shows potential for more, that's how I know I want to pursue that. And then what do you do with an idea? With an idea, I would suggest first thing is writing it down on a piece of paper or on your notes app. I will often write down things on my notes app. I have so many things that are maybe never going to become books, but they're there for me in case I need it and for my mind to be at peace. Because if you come up with like something really great right after you wake up or right after you're in the shower, and you're like, no, that's such a good idea, I'll remember it. Chances are you might not, because you're moving on to something else and life is busy. So makes sense that you might need to write it down as a writer. So after I have an idea, I'll move on to sketches. And when I say sketches, I'm not only talking about, pencil to paper, drawing pictures. I'm also talking about like coming up with more ideas. It just kind of begets more ideas. So part of that is immersing myself in the world that I'm wanting to write in. So for the otter book, I was looking up everything I could about otters. I learned way more about otters than I will ever need to know, than you'll ever see in my book, but it's there. It helps inform the work. And as a writer, you're kind of like a funnel. So you get all this information and then it comes down to a point and you can just share the bits that you need to. So part of that makes your voice stand out because you're choosing what out of everything you're going to say. Also, if it's real to you, it'll feel real to the reader. So if you're coming up with, all these elements to your story and you're doing your research, it'll help inform confidence in you so that you can show that confidence in your writing and in your storytelling, and will be convincing to others as well. I would also say to let your mind wander because you might think of some new ideas. Here's some more sketches. I was just doing some character sketches of the otters by watching videos and looking at images, and then adding some of my own sparks as well. So this image here on the left was just, doodles as I was watching a video of an otter swimming in the water. And after some time and thought, they became characters, which is what you see here on the right. Something else I'll do to immerse myself in the world is create mood boards. So with the image where there's the storm, this is just an example of kind of a mood board I put together to convey what I wanted to in the image. And you can see bits and pieces that are probably showing in the actual image. But that's just to carry this feeling with me and add a layer of authenticity as well. So after you have your idea, sometimes it's kind of hard to move on from there. Like, okay, I got so many ideas now for this book, but what am I supposed to do with it now? Because you can get stuck in the experimental stage where you're just, all about going this way or that, or it can be anything I want it to be, and it can. But at one point, if you only have ideas, you don't have a book, you don't have a manuscript. So writing it down is very important. And when I've done books in the past, or with As Strong as the River, I first had the pictures, and then I added the text, which isn't typical, I think. And with The Perfect Rock, I actually had the manuscript first, and then I was doing the images. So these are some thumbnails, which is basically an outline of what I'm wanting to, of how I'm wanting to put the book together. And it gives like the key points, the big picture analysis. Let's see. Yeah, so thumbnailing is just like an easy way for me to get my ideas out, no pressure. These look like scribbles, I'm sure, and they are, and you better believe I was kicking myself for drawing all those little circles and being like, oh, aren't those fun? I can just add those. And then there are these big images that I end up having to do. So there's a lot of potential with these and a lot of work as well. And something that as both a writer and an illustrator that I'm trying to do is balancing showing versus telling. So it's not always what you say, but it's often what you don't say. In this example, they have a pretty busy schedule. When I read this out to kids, sometimes they'll be like, no, they don't. They're hanging out on the beach. They're playing in seaweed. They're sliding down a slide. But if I was saying that all out loud, there might not be that chance for a child to react, to have that like moment of like outrage, like, what? They're not busy. So I think that trying to include opportunities for the illustrator to be able to tell that other half of the story is really important, because they are saying half of the story. The illustrators aren't just illustrating what you write down. Often the two pieces become greater than the parts, so greater than the sum of the parts. And sometimes when you're focusing too much on style, what was I going to say? So too much on style, or the, sorry, one sec. I think I'm missing a slide, but that's okay. So leave the illustrator space to tell their half of the story. So you want to make sure that there's not just one thing you're focusing on. And like, sometimes I have ADHD, so as you can probably tell, which means I kind of bounce from idea to idea very often, or I can just fixate on one thing. And sometimes when I do that, I spend way too much time on one thing and not enough on everything else. And there's this story in Art and Fear that I'd like to share with you guys. So there is, I'll just paraphrase it. So there's a pottery teacher, and they're saying to their students, we're going to split you into two groups. One half is going to make one perfect pot. Like, you're going to be judged on the quality of pot you make. You only have to make one. Just work on this one. And then he told the other half of the class, I want you to make as many pots as you can. To throw as many pots on the wheel, and you'll be graded on how many pots you do. And at the end of this of the semester, the people that were made to do just one pot, and versus the people that made many pots, was kind of surprising, or it might be surprising. People that did many pots actually had better quality as well as quantity than the first group. So when you focus too much on just the one thing, you're not getting that practice in, you're not getting those failed attempts, which help inform how you write in the future. Oh. So after the sketches and the thumbnails, I'll often move on to color studies. And this is just an example, because I'm not going to show you all the scribbles I did for the whole book, but this is an example of how I did the cover. And as you can see, I went through a lot of iterations. Something I learned from this, which was interesting to me looking back, is that the ones I thought were not going to make a big impact in my illustrations or were not going to make any part of the final artwork, eventually did. So like this pink one, for instance, I was just adding that in there because I was like, I got to add variety. I got to cover my bases. And then that pink from the kelp ended up making it to the pink of the final cover. And that was something that was repeated in the rest of the book. You'll see, oh, I thought I had a picture of the final cover there, but that's fine. This is the final cover. So you can see the pink kelp here. And I've included elements of the other thumbnails as well, but the pink was something that was unexpected, something that I learned. And part of creating or part of showing your voice is taking those chances in your writing and in yourself, going those different avenues with your ideas, and then showing it with confidence. And some of you may be familiar with how picture book artists and writers often create a book dummy, which is basically just a practice book. And it's the illustrator's chance and the writer's chance to make sure everything feels cohesive. It's a good practice to do when you're either doing your outline or you have a first draft, because it helps with like how you can do a page turn, things that you can't quite replicate when you're just looking at it on a screen, at a manuscript on the screen. And it's really easy to make. You just get some computer paper. You don't even need to print anything off, but you can write the script right on there, staple it together, glue it together, whatever you want, and read it out loud. And I think that for me has been really helpful in making sure that I can be concise with my writing, that I'm not saying too much, or that I'm not dwelling too much on certain pages. But it can be very helpful. There's where that slide went. This is the cover. And here's the color studies of the rest of the book. And this is done digitally because I was running out of time. So I didn't have time to do the cute little oil pastel paintings for each of these. But as you can see, there are those themes carrying on, like that pink. And some of these are different ultimately because I did revisions. But it was helpful to be able to see this all together. And I referred back to it many times when I was doing the final artwork. That leads me on to revisions. So this is just a little screenshot of one of the files I had that was labeled feedback. And then right after I took a screenshot of this, I found like 3 other folders I had somewhere, and they were all filled with like feedback and revisions and things like that. So it's definitely a process, and it's throughout the whole thing. So when I was doing my thumbnails, I got feedback. When I was doing my sketches, I got feedback. When I turned in my manuscript, I got lots of feedback, and it can be a lot to handle sometimes. Like when I first got back the revisions, I was like, oh, my editor and art director must hate me because they don't think I can do this. Look at all the stuff they gave me to change. I don't think I can do this. This is really hard. And I just felt like, like it was in the middle of the pandemic. I was about to move. There was a lot going on in my life at the time where I was just feeling way overwhelmed. And it can definitely feel that way with anything really. But when revisions come after you've spent so long on something, it can be kind of difficult to handle, I think. And then I want to read this quote from Art and Fear. One of the basic and difficult lessons every artist must learn is that even the failed pieces are essential. So you learn from each thing you do. No work is wasted as long as you have, that goal in mind, that bigger picture. Because even if you don't have a goal, it's helpful to be able to to have space for your ideas and your work and your writing. So obviously not all of it's going to fit in your book. That leads me to, maybe burnout, which is what I suffered during this book. I really did love working on this book so much, but there is a certain point where I had just too much to do. And it was really difficult to kind of ground myself in what like my original vision for the book was, and still enjoy that process. So I think giving yourself time and space to work is really essential in this. So even if it's like you're working on a deadline that you've either set for yourself or that you've set with your publisher, being honest about the time it's going to take to help move through maybe a difficult phase of the process. And something that really helped me kind of pull myself out of the burnout, out of the struggle, was doing something that was unrelated to my project at all. So I started off each day like spending 30 minutes writing something different or drawing something different than my book, and that helped keep like a fresh perspective through the whole process. Because I was working on this book with the writing and everything else for almost a year. Like I was working on the manuscript for a good while working on other projects, and then the illustrations took from July of last year till like January. So it was a long process with everything. And it can be hard to keep that spark alive sometimes. And then just remembering that each step you have is a step forward. Even if you look at a chart of your progress, it might go up and down, but as long as you're moving towards this goal, that's how you know you're progressing and how you'll make it. So some key takeaways for me, things that stood out to me as I was trying to put together this presentation, were to focus on things that interest you, things that make you unique. For me, I moved many times when I was a kid, so setting was always really important to me and something I noticed, and so were animals. So that was something I carried on. What you focus on might be different. To immerse yourself in the world of your story, consuming books and media and having experiences that have to either relate with your story or will help spark your creativity further. Leaving space for the illustrations. You want to make sure that as a writer, you're not trying to do it all. You want to give space for the other people in this project with you, and that includes the illustrators. Finding your voice or style comes organically through iteration, through practice, and really, if you try to force it, you'll come out with something that looks forced. It'll be natural to you when you've done it enough and practiced. And also to be open to feedback with revisions, and then also trust yourself and your vision. Something with The Perfect Rock was that there were some things that were suggested to me by the publisher that I was like, yes, definitely agree with this. I can do this. There were some things that were confusing and I wasn't sure how to fix, but through time and patience was able to. And then there were even some things that were important for me to keep the same. So for instance, the title changed. I should have said this back before. The title changed for The Perfect Rock. It was originally Our Rock. And then when the suggestion was made to change the title, they suggested The Perfect Pebble. And The Perfect Pebble definitely has a good ring to it. It's got the alliteration and everything. But I knew as a writer and as an illustrator that the rock was something I wanted to continue as a metaphor throughout the story. So that was something I wrote back and was like, I really think that it's important that I still say that it's a rock in this and not a pebble, even if it looks like a pebble in the illustrations. And they agreed. And I think sometimes just having that confidence in yourself is really important, both to your own confidence and also to your publisher's confidence in you as a writer, because they're hiring you, they're interested in what you have to say, and it's a collaborative effort. But ultimately, you want everyone to be on the same page with it. And then you're able to have your books, and it's what feels like a very long process, very rewarding process, and ultimately when you get to hold it in your hands, it just feels really wonderful. So I hope that some of what I've shared might have sparked something, like maybe to do an exercise, to make a book dummy, to just encourage you to write, continue to write, because ultimately that's how you'll make your book. And just a little special thing that I was thinking about, I wanted to do a little giveaway. So I was going to give away a copy of The Perfect Rock, which is what we read today, Art and Fear, which I read a few quotes from, and a writer's notebook. And also you can sketch in it too. So even if you're not a writer, even if you're not an illustrator, you can still draw on it because it doesn't need to go anywhere but here, just for you. And then these fancy pencils I like, the Blackwing pencils. They have erasers that can come out further and extend, and it's fun. You can join this giveaway by following me and the Book Bungalow on Instagram. And are those right, Tanya? Tanya's Book Bungalow?
Yes.
Okay. And then you can send me, in addition to that, you can send me a DM on Instagram and just share with me one takeaway you got from this workshop, or you can share with me a picture book that you've read and recently loved, just so I have some more things to read. But that's that for you. And
okay. Okay. Why don't you stop sharing?
Oh, yes.
Let's go to the Q&A. We've got Valerie Paytoon wants to know if you've ever illustrated for another author.
So I've done projects where I've done like some illustrations that aren't quite picture books, but like there was like a clothing catalog thing I kind of did where there was a short story being written and I illustrated that. I don't think it's out yet, so that's why I don't have it on my Instagram or anything. But yes, I have before, and it's a little difficult. But also,
are you open to doing illustrations for other authors? Yeah, you are.
I am for sure. This is just illustrating and writing my own books is the way I generate my ideas and my work. So it's the easiest way for me to get started. But happy to do other people's as well.
And she also, I think you may have answered this in your presentation, but because you did it one way for As Strong as the River, where you did the all the illustrating first and then the story. But so are you going to continue with what you did with The Perfect Rock and do the story first and then the illustration?
So I think my happy place is doing them simultaneously. So doing those sketches and my writing at the same time, because then I can write little notes here and there. I can change the words, I can add and take away. And that's how I really enjoy doing it. But sometimes circumstances or deadlines don't let you do that. So that's what happened with this book, because I just wanted to send a manuscript out first, not realizing maybe the different challenges I would have with illustrating what I had written previous.
Yeah. Linda Plavak wants to know, is Flying Eye Books a UK publisher?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Did you
they,
get that contact through being there in the UK?
yeah. So I met them at the Bologna Book Fair, which is like the big children's book fair. And
Mhm.
I was going around with my book dummies and showing them to publishers. And Flying Eye was one of those places I went to and made a really good connection. So
So you didn't have an agent, you went directly to the publisher.
I did, yes.
Do you
So,
have an agent now, or are you just sticking with that publisher?
I do have an agent now. I just recently signed with an agent, Maria Vicente.
Oh,
So she's really amazing, and I'm excited to work with her too.
cool.
Yeah, so you can do it on your own, but it's harder. It's a lot harder to do on your own. It's nice to now feeling the difference. It's nice to have someone on your team to kind of help you through
Yeah.
the difficult publishing things.
Um, Linda also wanted to know, do they do the cool textures on all of their books? She loves the texture of the cover, which is, yeah.
Yeah. So they do. I have it with both of the books. They have the cool debossing. They don't do that, I think, with every book. They might do something different, like spot gloss or like the soft touch. But I was really happy with how the publisher produced this book. It's also made without plastic, and that's really important to me as someone who really cares about the environment and animals. And so they really care about stuff like that, which is great for me to be working with someone who shares that view.
Great. Are you working on a new book now? That's
Yeah,
my
so I'm sure. I'm in the early stages, so doing the thumbnails right now. I'm trying to get all of those working, getting those first drafts written out. So yeah, I'm starting a new book right now too, which is fun to go through this presentation and be like, oh yeah, that's where I'm at. Okay, whole process.
Can you tease us with the subject matter, or?
Sure, yeah. So the book I'm working on right now is about foxes,
Oh, yeah,
and that's about all I can say right now.
that's all you could say. Okay. I am not seeing any other questions. Let's see. Oh, how long? Jerusha wants to know how long it usually takes to complete each book. So, what month did you start with your first book, As Strong as the River? In what year, and when did you finish
Mm,
that to
okay,
getting it published?
sure. So for As Strong as the River, I had already put together a book dummy and done the majority of the writing and everything too. So the process for that was several months to put that together. But I signed a contract with Flying Eye, I think, in July 2019,
Mm-hmm.
and it was set to be published in the next year. But then COVID happened, and so we published in 2021. So
Okay.
yeah,
And
but
how? Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. So um, that process probably took about 6 months from when I had a book dummy to finishing everything, doing all the revisions, the writing, everything like that. And with The Perfect Rock, it was longer because I did about double the images. So even the little circles I was telling you guys about that gave me such a pain later, any of these are done 4 times the size because it's really hard to get detail with oil pastels. So I was doing, big size paintings even for the smaller images.
Oh.
And so that took longer for
Oh.
sure.
And with the Fox book that you're working on now, what phase are you in, the book dummy phase, or are you beyond that?
I'm in the brainstorming, writing, and thumbnailing stage. So like working towards getting a book dummy together.
Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions.
Okay.
I think, oh, one more. Oh, Jerusha says, thanks so much. As a writer and illustrator, what do you typically look for in a contract with a publisher?
What do I look for? That's the hard part, is that as an author and illustrator, I wasn't very well versed in contracts, which is why now I have an agent.
An agent, yes.
Yeah, I don't think I should be giving advice on that, because I did my best, but I can't really speak to like what you should look out for, or what you should be doing.
Are your books being distributed in other countries? Like the
Yeah.
I'm sure in the UK, but do you have international rights and everything? So I'm sure your agent's probably going to shop them to other countries.
Yeah, so the first two books I've done are without an agent, but Flying Eye has sold the rights to several other publishers in different countries. So like in Australia, it's there, New Zealand, in Taiwan. I have also one from Russia, and those are the ones I'm aware about. So yeah,
do they use your same covers? Because I know with adult fiction and nonfiction, they will change covers for different countries. But this is a picture book, so I just wondered if would they use your same covers?
They did use my same cover. They cropped it a little bit differently, and like some of the images I did are just like a different format. And with my other, like with the Russia copy that I have, they actually did like spot illustrations instead of debossing and stuff. I would show you, but I don't want to show you my messy closet.
No, that's okay. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I think we will wrap up. Thank you so much for spending this time with us, Sarah, and answering all of our questions. And thanks to Sarah Hinze for her signing, and to all those who joined us. And remember, if you want a copy of The Perfect Rock, you can get a free one if you enter her giveaway thing, or you can get it at our bookstore or order it through our website. And same with As Strong as the River. I'll be sending a follow-up email with links to this recording, the order pages on our website, and a link to Sarah's website where you can read more about her art and her work. And thank you, everybody, and I hope you'll all stay safe. Have a great day, and we'll see you. Thank you, Sarah.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, everybody.